This will be a basic study of 33rd degree Albert Pike, founder of the American Scottish Rite. The 5th degree, Perfect Master. O Jehovah, our Lord, Grand Architect of the universe, who hast created the heavens, the earth, all living creatures, and the souls of men, whose name excels all others on the earth, and thy glory is above that of all others in the heavens, when he consider thy heavens, created by thy thought, the stars and worlds, whose motion and harmony is ordained by thee, and their infinity and our littleness. What is man that thou art mindful of him, or the son of man that thou concernest thyself for his welfare? Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, thou coverest thyself with light as with a garment, and stretches out the heavens, like a curtain. Thou layest the beams of thy chambers on the waters, and makest the clouds thy chariot, and walkest on the wings of the wind. Thou art the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God besides thee. Thou formest the light and craziest darkness. Thou makest good and createst evil. Thou does all these things. And yet thou dost regard and protect, as thou didst frame and make, the smallest thing that lives, and watchest over the life and fortunes of the living but invisible atoms that float in the air, and by tens of thousands inhabit the water drops, and toil in the sea to build up continents. Therefore, wilt thou be kind and merciful to man, whom thou hast made, and to whom thou hast given a living soul. Preside thou over our work, increase harmony and disinterested friendship among us, and among all men increase everywhere, and spread abroad the knowledge of the ancient truth. I incline us by our charities and the parity of our lives to imitate thee, at an infinite distance from thee, and aid and strengthen us to perform all the duties, which thy law and our obligations as man and masons require of us, and to thee be all honor, praise and glory forever. Amen. 1. When he consider thy heavens, created by thy thought. 2. Thou hast given a living soul. 3. Who hast created the heavens, the earth, all living creatures, and the souls of men. 4. Thou makest good and createst evil. The ever-living God afterwards formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the life of animals, but man became a life-containing soul. The ever-living God then planted a garden in Eden, in the east, and there he placed the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground the ever-living God caused to grow all the trees that were beautiful and good for food, as well as the tree of lives in the center of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, you should read it as, man became a living thought container. The tree of lives is Jupiter, or Marduk, the king of rebirth, and the tree of good and evil is Venus. Bipolar nature, Lucifer the light bringer and Jezebel the harlot. And the other trees in the garden are the planets, sun and moon. And the garden is the solar system. Once you understand this, everything becomes clear. The trees, the mountains, the rivers, the lamps, the islands are all the planets, and the sea is the solar system or garden. All cryptic words to steer you away from the facts, metaphor and allegory is thick in biblical texts. Because as I keep telling you, everything is astrology. Or simply believe, an actual 2,000 feet high mountain actually falls from the sky. Founding of the antediluvian, places the first ruler of mankind 340,685 BC equals astrology religion. First king of mankind 365,000 BC equals astrology religion. Flood to have occurred about 35,000 BC. Hamasi seized the hegemony in 4137 BC. Founding of Sumer 4000 BC equals astrology religion. Founding of Assyria 2025 BC equals astrology religion. Founding of the Hittites 2000 BC equals astrology religion. Founding of Egypt 3000 BC equals astrology religion. Founding of Mycenaean Greece equals astrology religion. Founding of Rome 700 BC equals astrology religion. Founding of the Catholic Church, they say 33 AD. Founding of Constantinople equals 330 AD equals Christ. Founding of 7 churches of Nicaea, 325 AD equals Christ. Founding of 48,000 denominations of Christianity, equals 18th–19th century. However, Rome was fully pagan before Constantine even was born, never mind Constantinople. Octavian or Augustus was a pagan emperor, and so was Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, Flavius Vespasianus. So, the Catholic Church says it was a fully organized religion long before Constantine the Great in 330 AD was even born. Titus Flavius Vespasianus, later known as Emperor Titus, was the eldest son of Emperor Vespasian, Titus Flavius Sabinus Vespasianus, and they shared the same father, but Titus was born in 30th of December 39 AD in Rome, while Vespasian was born on 17 November 9th AD in Riot, north of Rome. Vespasian, who became emperor in 69 AD after the year of the 4 emperors. The Roman Colosseum built date 82 AD. So, 60 years after the founding of the Catholic religion, it means Roman Catholics went to the games of death. And every man fought and prayed under the name Jesus. And again, the facts don't match real history. Then why does Emperor Flavius Vespasianus have Mercury, Thoth, Hermes, stamped on his coins if he was Catholic or Christian? Just this one coin destroys the Catholic Church lies. The Roman names for the days of the week are derived from celestial bodies and their associated gods. Sunday, the sun, dies Solis; Monday, the moon, dies Luni; Tuesday, Mars, dies Martis; Wednesday, Mercury, dies Mercury; Thursday, Jupiter, dies Jovis; Friday, Venus, dies Veneris; and Saturday, Saturn, dies Saturnia. However, the world population has been conditioned to not associate the days of the week with the planets, yet we still name them after the planets. Equals the biblical New Testament days of the week are named after the planets, but astrology is completely removed and alienated as it never existed. I also invest you with the collar and jewel of this degree. The compasses remind us that science, united to honor and virtue, made the architects of the temple the companions of kings, and that the men of intellect and learning, the great kings of thought, are in this age the rulers of the world. The sun, source of light to our system, and once worshipped as a god, and the star, type of the myriad suns that light other and countless systems of worlds, are emblems of that Masonic light, in search of which every Mason travels, the correct knowledge of the deity and of his laws that control the universe. The sun, source of light to our system, as I have said before many times, the sun is a tool, not a god. So thought, volition and perception are not the soul, but its attributes, and we have no cognizance of then soul itself, but only of them, its manifestations. Nor of God, but only of his wisdom, power, magnificence, truth, and other attributes. And yet we know that there is matter, a soul within our body, a God that lives in the universe. Take then the attributes of the soul. I am conscious that I exist and am the same identical person that I was 20 years ago. I am conscious that my body is not that if my arms were lopped away, this person that I call me, would still remain, complete, entire, identical as before. But I cannot ascertain, by the most intense and long-continued reflection, what I am, nor where within my body I reside, nor whether I am a point, or an expanded substance. I have the power to examine and inspect. I exist, will, think, perceive. That I know, and nothing more. I think a noble and sublime thought. What is that thought? It is not matter, nor spirit. It is not a thing, but a lower force. I make upon a paper certain conventional mark, that represent that thought. There is no power or virtue in the marks I write, but only in the thought which they tell others. I die, but the thought still lives. It is a power. It acts on men. 1. There is no power or virtue in the marks I write, but only in the thought which they tell others. I die, but the thought still lives. It is a power. It acts on men. And the fourth was named Penemuel. He taught the children of men the bitter and the sweet, and he taught them all the secrets of their wisdom. And he instructed mankind in writing with ink and paper, and thereby many sinned from everlasting to everlasting and until this day. For men were not created for such a purpose, to give confirmation to their good belief with pen and ink. For men were created exactly like the messengers, to the intent that they should continue pure and righteous. And death, which destroys all matters, could not have taken hold of them, but through this, their knowledge, they are perishing, and through this power it is consuming me. The important line is, and through this power, it is consuming me. Enoch is consumed by truth. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man shall know but he that shall receive it. He that overcometh, and laboureth in my service, until the end, to him will I give power, over the nations, and his influences, shall control, and guide them, and I will give him the morning star. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall remain there forever, and I will write upon him the name of God, and the name of the city of God, the New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from God, and mine own new name. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall remain there forever, and I will write upon him the name of God, and the name of the city of God, the New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from God, and mine own new name. To him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me near my throne, even as I also overcame and am seated with my Father near his throne. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous therefore, and repent. Did you notice the verses are straight out of the book of Revelations? I give power, over the nations, and his influences, shall control, and guide them. So, there is no such thing as free will, because the system repeats the same narrative, same gods, same rules, same belief, whether the biblical book of Revelations, or the Masonic order. Yes, some words are altered but the context and meaning remains the very same. And how the meaning of the zodiac and the churches are the same as the meaning in the book of Revelations, that's why Bibles are in Masonic lodges, because the Bible's allegories hide the true meaning behind the words. The Bible is a star record in times and locations, naming the many gods by different names. The names changes with each new age, but still the same gods. This is why the age of Aries, there was a law of no images of God, and his name is only, I am that I am, the unseen God, but the memory remains, by saying my father or a father. It's still Bel, Baal, Osiris, Marduk, Zeus, Ammon, Jupiter. This is why God with a capital G, is not in the New Testament. He just simply vanishes, of which the known zodiac did vanish, and the gods' names, and the zodiac disappeared during the age of Aries, and the biblical texts tell us how and why. Numbers 14:29-30 states, your bodies will fall in this wilderness, all who are numbered in the census, everyone 20 years of age, or older, because you have grumbled against me. Surely none of you will enter the land, in which I swore to settle you, except Caleb son of Jephunneh. By removing the older generation, Moses removes any and all memory, old name, old images, old administration, and the old zodiac, so the younger generation will worship the new name, new rules, new images, and new religions, new administrators. Take now this sacred treasure, the cubical stone hidden deep in the earth by Enoch the patriarch, and return with it whence he came. 3 zealous brethren, who, as Adonhiram, Jobab and Stolkin did before them, have descended through the 9 arches, into the subterranean vault, hewn in the solid rock, and have brought thence the cubical stone, the deposited by Enoch the patriarch, which they desire to lay before the great architect. I will make known to him their desire. Master, 3 zealous brethren wait without who, as Adonhiram, Jobert, and Stolkin did before them, have descended through the 9 arches, into the subterranean vault, hewn in the solid rock, and have brought thence, and desire to lay before you, the cubical stone that deposited by Enoch the patriarch. Behold, my brethren, the ineffable name of deity, engraved by Enoch, and discovered by the 3 first masons of the royal arch. My brethren, you are having, like the 3 illustrious masters who first received this degree, descended through the 9 arches, into the subterranean vault hewn in the solid rock, and brought thence the ineffable name deposited there by Enoch the patriarch. The brethren consent that you shall be advanced to be masons of the royal archegoses. So, did Enoch stay in Egypt and build an underground temple, or have any association with Egyptians, or peoples outside of Mount Hermon? 56.4. And in those days the messengers shall return and hurl themselves to the east upon the Parthians and Medites. They shall stir up the sovereigns, so that a spirit of unrest shall come upon them, and they shall rouse them from their thrones, that they may break forth as lions from their lairs, and as hungry wolves among their flocks. Enoch gives a date and a name of a kingdom, Parthians and Medites. The Parthians are well known in history and a lot of evidence, which places the Book of Enoch around 247 BC. This completely changes the whole timeline and narrative, because the Book of Enoch is the blueprint for the Book of Revelations. Repeated events over time. Albert Pike lies and often contradicts himself throughout the different degrees. In fact, if a low-ranking Freemason was to actually read the Scottish Rite, I'm sure he will be horrified with the lies and corruptions, and how unimportant he is. He says in the 1st degree one must believe in a God, and the God is called the Great Architect, but later in the 5th degree he claims the God is the Son, called Jehovah, the Great Architect. So where does this place the Watchtower or Jehovah Witnesses Christian religion? They both worship the Son. Or the Church is lying to its students, and later in the very higher degrees he says that God is both thought and self, while using astrology. The use of astrology is limited to the officers and the master in the lower degrees. The whole doctrine is based on deception and gatekeeping knowledge. The issue I have with Albert Pike's 33rd degree is he lists all of the books he used to form the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. And I also own the very same books, but Albert Pike wrote his book in 1857. However, the Sumerian, Assyrian and Babylon cuneiform tablets were at this time being dug up and translated, and the Hittite kingdom was found in 1834, and the Babylonian Epic of Creation restored from the recently recovered tablets of Assur, transcript in 1923, Oxford editions of cuneiform texts edited under the direction of S. Langdon, Professor of Assyriology 1923, the Chaldean account of Genesis, contain the description of the creation, the fall of man, the deluge, the Tower of Babel, the times of the patriarchs, and Nimrod, 1870. The Aramaic New Translation of the Book of Haggai or Enoch, 2009. I could go on. In short, Albert Pike's Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is out of date and false and fabricated. Because as I said, I own all the books Albert Pike's list in his doctrine where he sourced his information, which means I can very easily discredit. What people don't understand about the occult is it's based on reenactments, voice, intent, action and from the heart. The reenactment itself is the magic or the spell, but it's in conjunction with motion of astrology, and the 7 planets. Bodies in this degree are styled chapters. The hangings are white, strewed with crimson flames. Behind the master, in the east, are 5 columns, each of a different order of architecture, Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian and Composite. In the north is painted the North Star, and a little below it the 7 stars of the Great Bear. In the heat, behind the columns, is a luminous star, representing Jupiter, rising in the east as the morning star. Upon the altar, which is in the center of the room, are the Holy Bible, and on it all the instruments contained in a cane of mathematical instruments. The chapter is lighted by 3 great lights, one in the east, one in the west, and one in the south. Over the columns, in the east, hangs a triangle, enclosing the word, Adoni. The 7 planets are the 7 masters, each one represents a planet, star or the 12 officers of the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's why they wear the 7 colors on their aprons, and many Freemasons don't even understand what they are wearing. Interesting about Mars or Balaam. Mars cannot be worshipped. When Mars is worshipped, Mars will distort and corrupt. Yet Freemasons wear red and represent the virtues of Mars. That act alone is the catalyst for Balaam's return. Fundamentally, Freemasons believe they are perfecting their soul while being locked into reincarnation on the idea to return with their own future. They think, during the reincarnation stage of the New Age, the soul can select a rich family or royalty to be born into, bypassing the struggles of humanity and raised, while holding the knowledge. They assume the negative aspect of the soul has been removed, leaving a pure soul. But it's still about control over others. There is nothing saintly or godly about it. Because the higher degrees are about control of nations and people. Thus, low-ranking Masons are used as basically as tools. And here is why. Remember that we usually disparage others upon slight grounds and little instances, and if a man be highly commended, we think him sufficiently lessened, if we can but charge one sin of folly or inferiority in his account. We should be more severe to ourselves, or less so to others, and consider that whatsoever good anyone can think or say of us, we can tell him of many unworthy and foolish and perhaps worse actions of ours, any one of which, done by another, would be enough, we think, to destroy his reputation. If we think the people wise and sagacious, and just and appreciative, when they praise and make idols of us, let us not call them unlearned and ignorant, and ill and stupid judges, when our neighbor is cried up by public fame and popular noises. Every man bath in his own life sins enough, in his own mind trouble enough, in his own fortunes evils enough, and in performance of his offices failings more than enough, to entertain his own inquiry, so that curiosity after the affairs of others cannot be without envy and an ill mind. The generous man will be solicitous and inquisitive into the beauty and order of a well-governed family, and after the virtues of an excellent person. But anything for which men keep locks and bar, or that blushes to see the light, or that is either shameful in manners or private in nature, this thing will not be his care and business. It should be objection sufficient to exclude any man from the society of Masons, that he is not disinterested and generous, both in his acts, and in his opinions of men and his constructions of their conduct. Who is selfish and grasping, or censorious and ungenerous, will not long remain within the strict limits of honesty and truth, but will shortly commit injustice. Who loves himself too much, must needs love others too little, and he who is inclined to harsh judgment will not long delay to give unjust judgment, and afterwards, or not at all, hear the case. The generous man is not careful to return no more than he receives, but prefers that the balances upon the ledger of benefits shall be in his favor. Who hath received pay in full for all the benefits and favors that has conferred, is like a spendeth, who has misnamed his whale estate, and laments over an empty exchequer. Who requites my favors with ingratitude, adds to, instead of diminishing my wealth, and he who cannot return a favor is equally poor, whether that inability arise from poverty of spirit, sordidness of soul, or actual pecuniary poverty. If is wealthy who hath large sums invested, and the mass of whose fortune consists in obligations that bind other men to pay him money, he is still more so, to whom many men owe large returns of kindnesses and favor. Beyond a moderate sum each year, The wealthy man merely invests his means, and that which he never uses is still, like favor unreturned and kindness is unreciprocated, an actual and real portion of his fortune. Covetousness teaches men to be cruel and crafty, industrious in evil, full of care and malice. It devours young heirs, and grinds the face of the poor, and undoes those who specially belong to God's protection. Helpless, craftless and innocent people, it inquiries into our parents' age, and longs for the death of our friends. It makes friendship an act of rapine, and changes a partner into a vulture, and a companion into a thief. But generosity and a liberal spirit tend showmen to be human and genial, open-hearted, frank and sincere, earnest to do good, easy and contented, and well-wishers of all mankind. They protect the feeble against the strong, and the defenseless against rapacity and craft. They succor and comfort the poor, and are the guardians under God, of ill's innocent and helpless wards. They value friends more than riches or fame, a 5D gratitude in you than money or power. The context is about no free will, unless a person gives up free will and assumes roles and ranks, and does as he is told, then it's understandable why the constant contradictions and confusion. As I said, the Masonic order is based on bloodline, wealth and influences of people in power, or people who matter, but to go into Freemasonry with one's own goals and own reasonings is not allowed, regardless of right and wrong. That's it. Free will of the cosmos, your free will. The phrase "do what thou wilt" is central to the philosophy of Thelema, founded by Aleister Crowley. It emphasizes individual freedom and the pursuit of one's true will, which is considered the deepest and most authentic purpose of an individual. This principle suggests that each person should discover and act in accordance with their unique path in life, guided by self-awareness and personal responsibility. The full statement of Thelema is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, love is the law, love under will," which highlights the balance between personal liberation and ethical living. Excites them to enthusiasm, inspires patriotism, governs their conduct, controls their destinies, disposes of life and death. The words I speak are but a certain succession of particular sounds, that by conventional arrangement communicated to others the immaterial, intangible, eternal thought. The fact that thought continues to exist and destroy it. The spoken words, being mere sounds, may vanish into thin air, and the written ones, mere marks, be burned, erased, destroyed, but the thought itself lives still, and must live on forever. A human thought, then, is an actual existence, and a force and power capable of acting upon and controlling matter, as well as mind. Is not the existence of a God, who is the immaterial soul of the universe, and whose thought, embodied or not embodied, in his word, is an infinite power of creation and production, destruction and preservation, quite as comprehensible as the existence of a soul, of a thought separated from the soul, of the power of that thought to mold the fate and influence the destinies of humanity. And yet we know not whence that thought comes, nor what it is. It is not we. We do not mold it, shape it, fashion it. It is neither our mechanism, nor our invention. It appears spontaneously, flashing, as it were, into the soul, making that soul the involuntary instrument of its utterance to the world. It comes to us, and seems a stranger to us, seeking a home. As little can we explain the mighty power of the human will. Volition, like thought, seems spontaneous, an effect without a cause. Circumstances provoke it, and serve as its occasion, but do not produce it. It springs up in the soul, like thought, as the waters gush upward in a spring. Is it the manifestation of the soul, merely making apparent what passes within the soul, or an emanation from it, going abroad and acting outwardly, itself a real existence, as it is an admitted power? We can but own our ignorance. It is certain that it acts on other souls, controls, directs them, shapes their action, legislates for men and nations, and yet it is not material, nor visible, and the laws it writes merely inform one soul of what has passed within another. God, therefore, is a mystery, only as everything that surrounds us, and as we ourselves are a mystery. We know that there is and must be a first cause. His attributes, severed from himself, are unrealities. As color and extension, weight and hardness, do not exist apart from matter, as separate existences and substantives, spiritual or immaterial, so the goodness, wisdom, justice, mercy and benevolence of God are not independent existences. Personify them as men may, but attributes of the deity, the adjectives of one great substantive. But we know that he must be good, true, wise, just, benevolent, merciful, and in all these, and all his other attributes, perfect and infinite, because we are conscious that these are laws imposed on us by the very nature of things, necessary, and without which the universe would be a sense confusion, and the existence of a God incredible. Allah is the living, thinking, intelligent soul of the universe, the permanent, the stationary, of Simon Magus, the oxys that always is, to on, of Plato, as contradistinguished from the perpetual flux and reflux, or consensus, of things. And, as the thought of the soul, emanating from the soul, becomes audible, and visible in words, so did the thought, or God, springing up within himself, immortal as himself, who once conceived, immortal war, because in himself, utter itself in the word, its manifestation and the mode of communication, and thus create the material, mental, spiritual universe. This is the real idea of the ancient nations, God, the Almighty Father, and source of all, his thought, conceiving the whole universe, and trilling its creation, his word, uttering that thought, and thus becoming the creator, or demiurges, in whom was life, and that light the life of the universe. Nor did that word cease at the single act of creation, and having set going the great machine, and enacted the laws of its motion and progression, of birth and life, and change and death, ceased to exist, or remained thereafter in inert idleness. For the thought of God lives and is immortal. Embodied in the word is not only created, but it preserves. It conducts and controls the universe, all spheres, all worlds, all actions of mankind, and of every animate and inanimate creature. It speaks in the soul of every man that lives. The stars, the earth, the trees, the winds, the universal voice of nature, tempest and avalanche, the sea's roar and the grave voice of the waterfall, the hoarse thunder and the low whisper of the brook, the song of birds, the voice of love, the speech of men, all are the alphabet in which it communicates itself to men and informs them of the will and law of God, the soul of the universe, and thus, must truly did the Word become flesh and dwell among men. God, the unknown Father, Pater Agnostos. Pater Agnostis, known to us only by Iris attributes, the Absolute, I am, the thought of God, Ionoia, and the Word, Logos, manifestation and expression of the thought. Behold the trice, Masonic triad, the universal, soul, the thought in the soul, the Word, or thought expressed, the three in one, of a Trinitarian ecosis. Here Masonry pauses and leaves its initiates to carry out and develop these great truths in such manner as to each may seem most accordant with reason, philosophy, truth and his religious faith. It declines to not as arbiter between them. It looks chameleon, while each multiplies the intermediates between the deity and matter, and the personifications of God's manifestations and attributes, to whatever extent his reason, his conviction or his fancy dictates. While the Indian tells us that Parabrahmana, Brahm, and Paratma, were the first triune God, revealing himself as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, creator, preserver and destroyer, the Egyptian, of Amun-Ra, and Ptah, creator, matter, and thought, or light, the Persian of his trinity of three powers enormous, sources of light, fire and water, the Buddhists of the God sector, a trinity composed of Bodha, Dharmas, and Sangha, intelligence, law and union or harmony, the Chinese Sabaeans of their trinity of Changti, the Supreme Sovereign. Then, the heavens and Tao, the universal supreme reason and principle of all things, who produced the unit that, 2, and 3, all that is. While the Sullivan of End typifies his trinity by the 3 beads of the god Tréglier, the ancient Prussian points to his triune god, Perkaun, Piccolos, and Portrumpos, deities of light, and thunder, of hell and of the earth, the ancient Scandinavian to Odin, Frey, and Thor, and the old Etruscans to Tina, Talna, and Minerva, strength, abundance and wisdom, while Plato tells us of the supreme good, the reason, or intellect, and the Soul or spirit, and Philo of the archetype of light, wisdom and the word, the Kabbalists, of the primitive forces, light, spirit and life, while the disciples of Simon Magus, and the many sects of the Gnostics confuse us with their eons, emanations, poiesas, wisdom superior and inferior, Yod above, Adami Admon, even to the 365,000 emanations of the Meidalti. And while the pious Christian believes that the Word dwelt in the mortal body of Jesus of Nazareth, and suffered upon the cross, and that their holy cross was poured out upon the apostles, and now inspires every truly Christian soul. While all these faiths assert their claims to the exclusive possession of the truth, Masonry inculcates its old doctrine, and no more, that God is one, that his thought, uttered in his word, created the universe, and preserves it by those eternal laws, which are the expression of that thought, that the soul of man, breathed into him by God, is immortal as his thoughts, or that lies free to do evil, or to choose good, responsible for his acts and punishable for his sins, that all evil and wrong and suffering are but temporary, the discords of one great harmony, and that in Isis good time they will lead by infinite modulations to the great, harmonic final chord and cadence, of truth, love, peace and happiness, that will ring forever and ever, under the arches of heaven. Among all the stars, and worlds, and in all souls of men, and angels,